Good evening. This is Jacob Folger, artist and sculptor. And today we are going to make a fairy tree house. Okay? So basically it's going to be a little tree and within it a little house. And we'll put a little door in there and maybe stairs and leading up to it. And we're going to need a few things before we do that. We're going to need some clay. Self-hardening clay I think is the best thing to use, and I recommend Marblex or Mexican clay because when they dry hard, they dry very hard. The only thing you have to keep in mind is they won't be waterproof, and you can paint it and decorate it any way you like after you finish making it. In addition to that, we're going to need a bowl or cup of water, just regular tap water, and a sprayer bottle that can do a mist like that to keep the clay wet if we need to wet it down if it's drying out on us. Then also we'll need some wood tools. Which you can get at most arts and crafts type stores or art store. They come in a package normally of about 5 or 6 different shapes, and this is the one I use all the time, as most of you know that watch my videos. We'll also need a sharp knife. Okay, you can use an X-Acto blade knife or a sharp paring knife, and we also need a couple different paint brushes varying in softness for the clay that we'll be using that a little bit later. If you hear barking puppies upstairs, I'm sorry if they disturbed you, but they are just young puppies that make a lot of noise. And they're just fine other than that. Okay, so we're going to get started. The other thing, or one last thing that we need is a board. We need a board or a good stiff piece of cardboard or a piece of plastic that's stiff to do the sculpture on. And then the only other thing is you might need a piece of plastic, a plastic bag of some form, a little grocery bag or something like that. If you want to take a break, you can wrap it in plastic. Okay? And and one last thing, final last thing before we get started is when you go to purchase your clay, make sure that the clay is soft. Open the package up, and it'll be wrapped in plastic, and you don't have to take the plastic off, but just take your finger and shove it down into the clay like that. If it's not soft and pliable like this, don't buy it, because clay will sometimes get hard on the shelf, and it's just really frustrating when you get it home and you can't work with it. So that will save you some trouble if you run into that problem. Okay, to get started here today, we're going to start off. I call this my simple shapes sculpting method. And basically what we do is we start off with a simple shape, and this is going to be a small tree. This is the extent of the size of that tree is going to be on this board, which is only about maybe 5 inches tall. And so what we have to do to start is make the trunk of that tree. So tear off a piece of clay, roll a ball between your hands like this, like that, and then roll it to and fro like this to make the trunk of the tree. Okay? If one end is a point like that, see how it's a point like that? What you can do is that can be the first root of the tree. So you put that on the board. Now what I'm going to do is, because I have to hold this board up so that you guys can see it real well, I'm going to wet the board a little bit so the clay will stick to it better. Okay? And I'm just starting to get the tree trunk here. Okay, and just putting it on the board. Now that gives me a little bit of an idea of how big to make the mound it's sitting upon. So I'm going to just start to press clay in there And this technique that we use is simple shapes, but it's also, when we're doing the simple shapes, we want to be trying different things. We're going to be using a little bit of carving the clay, and we're going to be using where we do build up like this. All right, and I just want to build a little bit of a mound here. And you just follow along. This is kind of the way I teach. The way I teach is by coaching you and basically taking you through the steps until you have a finished piece. Another way to roll a shape is to roll it in your hand. So here, like I did in my palms, I roll a ball, then I roll it to and fro like this, and that gives me another root. If I roll at one end, it gives me a little bit of a point. Okay? Now, since this is a tree, we don't really need it to be really pristine as we're doing it. So it actually is better almost if it can be a little bit rough. Okay? And we just keep on adding to that. Now we'll do another noodle or so oblong shape, kind of pointed at one end, and then we can put that right here in the center. And it can go, and then we're going to add little branches off of it. So don't worry about how pristine and beautiful and smooth it is at this point, because that's not really going to matter too much until later, and I'll show you how to deal with that. Okay, so we're just adding little bits of clay to it to create little roots or legs off of the root. Now the door is actually going to go here, in case you're wondering. So the door is actually not going to go down here. And we'll just add that on there. And I'm going to have you using your tool here in a minute. But first I wanted to just get that kind of in shape. Now we're going to rough it in. So that's what we're doing here, is roughing it in. And so now I'm going to add the stairs. I'm going to start adding a staircase. So I'm going to roll little balls like this, like that, and then I'm going to squish them a little bit, and that's going to give me a stair. That's one stair right there. Okay. Now I did make a tree like this a long time ago. Well, actually it wasn't that long ago. It was during the summer. So I'm just going to add, and it's kind of along those lines, along those ideas. And sometimes when I'm making a piece, it's hard to bring it to complete, being complete. And the reason why is because I'm using a camera between me and the piece. And sometimes it's just hard to get that energy flowing the way it should. But this is going to be a little bit special, this piece. I am almost certain my friend Pat will be watching this video, and her name is Pat. She lives in Texas, way out in the desert, and we've become kind of phone pals, and most definitely phone pals. We talk almost every single day. We send pictures back and forth. She's an artist too, and she does a lot of work with trees. Only she takes real trees and just these funny looking stumps and that sort of thing, and she makes these incredible sculptures that are just amazing, of little fairy houses and little people and little tiny dogs and little tiny cats. And she made this one that has a saddle on it, a horse saddle, and just amazing detail. She's an incredible artist, and we've struck up a friendship. She met through one of my other videos. She contacted me about some moss, because I do moss gardens and that sort of thing. Okay, so okay, so you can see how the stairs are on here, and I just basically went straight down. We've got the roots here, We've got a little bit of a mound that it's sitting on, and we've got the trunk of the tree. So now what I want to do is start to carve this out a little bit and make it more more like a tree, and like it might actually be if it was a tiny tree. And so a lot of this, listen, the nice thing about sculpting clay is that you can always add clay or take clay away. Unlike carving wood, where you carve off a piece, it's really hard to get more wood on there. So if you get it to a point and it's looking good, and then all of a sudden, bang, you cut off a piece that you don't want, or you thought you didn't want, and then you realize you did want it, you just take a piece of clay and add it to it, just like that, okay? So don't worry about that. So what I want to try to do is start carving. I'm going to use this wood tool. I use this wood tool a lot. When you're out shopping for tools, they'll come in a bag. But if you see one in there, like this, in the bag, buy the bag. They're not that expensive, really. But they're you know, maybe $10 max, I think, for several tools, 7 or 8 or 9 tools. Okay. It's just that this tool, with the shapes that it has on it, is just really a nice little tool. So all we're doing basically is cutting, pressing, and carving the clay to give it the shape we want, okay? Now, a couple of things, I always try to give this disclaimer on these things, is that you know, it's really hard for me to be able to see the way, you know, I would if I was sculpting it myself in my own space with no one bothering me and you know, nothing going on. But I can't teach if you know, I don't have an opportunity to teach people in person as much as I do have on video. So, and I love to teach. I love to show people what I do, and hopefully help them do it too. So when I'm sculpting, though, I have to, for this to work properly, at least until I get some better equipment, the camera can go blurry at times, and it can be problematic in general. So for that reason, I have to keep the camera in front of me, and my eyes are, I'm getting older, my eyes are not as good as they used to be, so I have to take my glasses off to see the camera lens, but to see this, it's blurry here. So if I pull, it's just, believe me, I'm just trying to explain to you, it's really hard to do a beautiful, wonderful sculpture when I'm doing a video. It also, the energy is just not the same. But I most certainly can teach, and people are learning, and a lot of people watch my videos now, and a whole lot. It's going very well, actually. I really enjoy the fact that I'm able to see the analytics made by YouTube, so I can actually see how many people are watching and how long they're watching. So I know people are learning, and that just makes me feel good. It's kind of a legacy, leaving a legacy, and since I don't have any family, it's really important to me to do that. It's something that I can share with the world, and actually long after I'm gone too. So it's very good thing. So, and I think various reasons, I just really like teaching too. So, and I hope it's working for you. So as you can see now, we got the staircase going, and it's just a matter of carving it, and it's going actually very well. And if you come up with your own ideas about how to maybe try something or that sort of thing, you can. You can, another idea is to look at pictures of old trees, the ones that have the big roots on them, and you can start to get an idea about maybe how to build your own tree. You know, that's maybe a little bit different than the one I'm doing here, but right now we're just trying to learn, so I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, you can just do one exactly like this if you like. Just in the furting to get you started and off, on a roll here. So I'm just carving back now, trying to get a little bit of space between the roots and the the mound. And as far as getting it, you know, pristine and pretty looking, you know, and everything, don't worry about that. Again, please. Later on, we're going to brush everything out and make it really nice and the way you like it, the way you want it. Okay, so it's coming along. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is just start the door. So taking the more spoon-like or scooping-like part of the tool, clean it off there a little bit, I'm going to carve a door into the tree. Alright, like that. You just pull off the clay if it's in your way. And so my plan and my intention, of course, is to finish this tree for my friend Pat. You know, make it, finish it, mold it, and finish it, make it look nice and new and nice for my friend Pat. And then mail it out to Texas to her. That's the plan. So it's actually not too bad yet at this point. So maybe that will work out and she'll be happy to receive a tree from me. Okay, so there we go. So it's coming along. You see, it's not that hard to do. Not that hard at all. If you mess up, you can add more clay. Don't worry about that. Okay, I want to add a few branches up here. So I pull off a piece of clay from my little mound of clay over here. Mound of clay right here. And I'm gonna add a branch, so I'm gonna want a fairly strong branch because it's down near the base of the tree. And I'm just gonna add it right up here. And if you wanted to make this bigger, you most certainly could. Okay, you could make it bigger. This type of sculpting that we're doing here is a universal for most sizes. If you're going to get really big, it might create a problem because the weight of the clay might cause issues. And this is what I call a relief. I don't know if it's a perfectly technical term for it, but I call it a relief because it is flat on the back, but this design, when it's completed, should be able to stand straight up and down. So that's the plan. I think it will, and I'll show you how to do that. So when it's done and dry and everything, it should be able to stand straight up and down. And I'm just adding branches almost randomly at this point, just to get me where I need to be to have a treetop going on here. If you get ideas that are creative, that are popping into your head as you're doing it or watching this, try them out. Most definitely, try them out. Now I'm going to just add some little legs coming off, those sprouts or whatever coming off the top. I need to keep it within the length of the board though, because it could be problematic. I will mold this piece for my friend Pat, and it's not. I started to talk about that in my gargoyle making video. I explained that I've made a lot of sculptures and I've molded a lot of them, but I'm not teaching mold making yet. I may do that later, but right now I'm not doing it yet. So there's a lot of there's a wealth of information on YouTube. Just do a search on making a mold, how to make a mold, and you will get tons of awesome videos. Not everyone can teach sculpting. I'm very good at that. People like my teaching and they learn from it. I like to concentrate on something that I know how to do. Okay. Now I'm going to just start. So even though I've got the door in there, and that this might actually distort the tree a little bit, I'm just going to start squeezing it a little bit and just sort of getting it to where I want it to be, and then I can go back and fix the door again later. But basically, A lot of this is just, you know, watching what I do, trying it, because this is like sculpting all the way. I mean, this is like this is what it is. This is how it's done, and it may not come to you very easily at first, if you've never made something like this. But you will get it. You'll definitely get it. But you have to practice, you know, anything that you do that you've never tried before. Some people can wing it the first time and say, oh man, that really looks nice, you know, but not always. So just keep that in mind. So basically I'm just making the tree branches here, and my eyes are fuzzy, boy oh boy. But this is how I gotta do it. I've been doing it like this for a long time, and when I get something that works, I just keep at it. So it seems to work. I'm just cutting off the bottom a little bit here. All right. It actually is not too bad. Another thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to groove the tree. I'm going to add some grooves in it to give it some depth and texture. And just by doing that, by dragging the tool through the roots in the trunk, I'm basically creating this texture that might look like bark. All right. So Pat is a gifted sculptor herself, and she's really actually bashful, it seems. Maybe not bashful, but shy about saying it. When I saw some pictures, and she finally did send me some pictures of her work, I was like, oh my god, this woman is amazing. Just amazing. Okay, it's coming along. There we are. It's looking very nicely. It actually is looking, I mean, it came together so quickly, I'm surprised. Okay, so now that we've got that going on a little bit, let's see, I want to dig these up a little bit more. Hold them down and kind of scratch them up a little bit. You know, trees, you know, sometimes they can be uniform. If you really like something that's uniform in something, make it uniform, make it symmetrical, do whatever you like. Celtic trees are often, Celtic designs are often very uniform and symmetrical, with all kinds of symmetrical designs. I've done some Celtic work designs before. I like them. I like doing it. It's just a little bit harder because, you know, it's to me it's difficult. I don't do it enough. Again, practice is the key here. Okay, so get a paintbrush now and just pick one that's, again, a medium hardness, like this one here. It's about medium. And get your water bowl or water cup and put it over nearby where you're working. Dab your brush into it. Let me see if I can push this over so you can see what I'm doing, because this would be helpful to know. So if you dab your brush into it, if there's any clay on it, and you stab it into the bottom of the bowl where the water is, it will clean it off better. So let's try it. So the other thing is, I don't want to get sopping wet because it'll just make a mess. So I'm just going to now just brush it, and this will start to smooth it out. Little fairy tree house here. Now, I don't know if some of you have seen my videos, some of my other videos, but I've got a number of videos on how to make miniatures in clay. And some of them are little elf-looking little guys. One is playing a mandolin. I have one that's it's just tiny, a little frog playing a guitar. So you could actually do that here, you know. Maybe we'll do that. We'll go ahead and stick a little fairy on here, sitting on the staircase, playing some kind of instrument. So now if you got it wet like that and you start smoothing it out, you can come back and you can do a little more carving with a semi-wet tool, and just keep carving and keep wetting, and pretty soon you will have a really awesome looking little tree. I'll show you how to do the door here in a minute. Okay, so it just looks like almost like a spooky little old tree at this point. Okay, I'm gonna let the door area dry a little bit more before I start trying to do something with it, because I think it will be kind of muddy. Okay, and so now I think what I want to try is a little bit of foliage. And so this is how I would do it. I'm going to roll small balls like this. I'm going to roll them into little oblong shapes like that. Then I'm going to take the oblong shape and I'm going to roll it just on one end, giving it a little bit of a point like that. And then I'm going to do that on the other side like that. And what have I got? I got a little football, right? What happens if I squeeze the little football? The little football then looks like a leaf. Okay? It's not hard to do. And then they just have to be placed. I just have to place them on here. Find places to put them. And I'll show you how to bring it all the way in a minute. But first I want to go ahead and add a few. And they don't have to be exactly the same every time. They can be different sizes. I'm not going to worry about it running over here because I have a plan for this. When I make the mold, I can add wood to this piece. I don't want to make it a lot bigger because this is, the idea is a miniature, and Pat likes miniatures, so that's why I'm making it so small. This is for Pat. And but when you make yours, you can most definitely make it bigger. You can most definitely make it bigger without any problem at all. Okay, so just roll a ball between your fingers. It's best between your fingers because then you get your fingers moving, by the way. The palms of your hands are pretty static for the most part. It's your fingers you need to get moving. When you're sculpting, you need to get your fingers spry and able to be active. Okay? If you have a disability that makes it difficult for you to use your fingers, you let me know. Send me a message and I'll see if I can figure out something for you, okay? Because I'm actually very good at solving problems. So if you have an issue like that, you just let me know. So what you do is you take a sharp knife, and we'll do this one up here. I'll show you. Okay? You take the knife, the point of the knife, and you basically just draw a line on the leaf like that. Okay, bring it in closer so you can see. And then I'm going to move this up a little bit. It's going to jiggle a minute. Okay. Alright. And then once you've got the line on the leaf, that would be the stem running up the length of the leaf. You just draw little lines like that on the leaf. Almost like you would make a feather. I mean, a feather could be the same way. Okay. And now we're going to work on the door. So what I want to do here is I want to scoop this out a little bit more. Just scoop it out so it's more even in there. Okay, just take your time and just carve it out. You probably don't want to make it too deep unless you want to go all the way through, which would not be the end of the world. It just might be kind of hard to carve out a door inside there if it was that way. So what we have here is this, even though the tree is like, so that outside of the tree is like almost like that's almost one step there. So there's 1 step, 2 steps, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. But you could have more steps, more or less, doesn't matter. Okay? Now, this is how I'm going to make the door. Just going to make this a little bit more uniform, I think. Little fairy door. Okay, when making a door for this tree, it can be as complicated or simple as you want it to be. And the way I'm going to do mine is I'm going to make it very simple. And part of the reason why, there's a couple of reasons why. One is, it's so small that if I try to make it really complicated, it will just probably make a mess. Even me, and I've been sculpting for years. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to make it look like a wood door with just planks of wood going downwards. And the way to do that is with my knife. And all I'm going to do is now is draw from the top to the bottom, or carve, cut, what have you, into the clay. And that makes a believable door. To me, it's believable. You know, maybe cut an outline for the bottom. And I could for the sides as well, but I'm not going to. So I'm just going to leave it just like that. When you finish it, it will look very much like a little wood door. And there's all kinds of ways to finish, and we'll talk about that again a little bit later on. Now, what I want to do is, if you have seen any of my miniature sculptures videos on how to make a miniature man or elf or fairy, that would be a good time this would be a good time to watch one of those videos, because what we're going to do is we're going to make a man sitting on the step here, on one of the steps, and we're going to make him very small. So you can, you know, skip this step if you want to, but that's what I want to do for this piece. So I'm going to start off with a small ball of clay, rolling it between my fingers, and then rolling it to and fro like that to create the legs of this little guy. Okay, and that's the first step. So I'm going to make that about that long, about 1 inch long. Then I'm going to fold it that in half, and that is now the legs. And I'm going to sit them down here. Remember to score and wet just a little bit of water, though. You don't want a lot. And I'm just going to bend one knee going down like that, and the other going down like this. And we've got his legs on there. Now I'm going to make the torso of his body. I'm rolling a little ball. I roll it into an oblong shape like that. And then I'll put that there for the trunk of his body, or the torso of his body. And I'm trying to keep it, the positioning of his body, so that the tree is behind him, because if I don't, it would break off very easily. Next step is to roll a ball for his head, and then slightly, just slightly for oblong for his, so it'd be more of an oval shape. And put that up here, scoring and wetting as we go. I think I'm going to turn his head just a little bit, because I'm going to make this one playing an instrument. I want him playing an instrument. But because the tree is over to the right here, normally if you were a left-hand player with playing the neck, there would be there'd be a problem over here, because it would break off very easily. Okay, we need arms, so we just add 2 noodles, or noodle shapes, for the arms. Don't worry about length right now, we can snip them off later. And then we can also blend in the arms to the body a little bit. Like that. Okay, and then we're gonna make a guitar or some kind of I think a mandolin in this case. So we roll a little noodle, and that's almost too big. Really, I'm gonna cut that in half. Try it again, and because you don't want it bigger than him, so make it like that. Put it here. Okay, and then the neck of the instrument. I'm not really sure what the instrument is. We could call it maybe a banjo or something like that. We put this on here. And just keep in mind, I'll show you as we go here. So we want his arm to come up. Sometimes a tool to help us do that is a good idea. Alright. And then bring it up to be playing it. His hand on the neck. And his other arm. Sometimes you just need a tool to kind of get it loose there from the clay. You know, you try to add an arm again because that arm just sort of melted into the body there somehow. And there you go. Now back behind his arm there, and the neck of the little banjo, you need to fill that in, or if you don't, it would probably break off eventually. So go ahead and fill that in, and then you can just sort of carve it in, make sure it stays, and press the arm and neck back to it, and then blend everything. This is really little miniature work here. This may be very frustrating for you if you've never done it, and frustrating for me, even though I've done it many times. But I've actually never done a piece quite like this, that's for sure. I've never done something like this before. So just carve it in and blend it in. And if you mess up the door, you can go back with your knife and just carve it in, cut it in, back again. Okay. The other thing you can do is you can take a board like this that has a right angle like that, and a right angle like that, and put it up against your tree base, flat against the board, and you can see how flat it is. You can see how flat the bottom is. If you you know, adjust the clay accordingly by using your knife on it like this, you can cut off where, if it's not completely flat, almost to, or at least close to completely flat, it won't stand up when you go to stand it up. And the clay, once it's hard, will be very hard, and you won't be able to cut it, so not easily anyways. So by doing that, you can find out if it's flat enough on the bottom.